Welcome back, and today we are checking out another death battle. This one's going to be Magneto versus Tetsuo. Magneto from Marvel Comics, which I'm sure most, if not all of you guys already know because he's been everywhere for decades. TV shows, the movies, the comics. Very well-known character. Then we have Tetsuo from the anime Akira. Akira is actually the anime that got me into animes. It was the first proper anime movie I ever watched, so I've got a special place in my heart for both of these characters, actually. So let's go ahead and get into the breakdown, and I will give my prediction after that.
Magneto, Marvel's mutant master of magnetism.
Tetsuo Shima, Akira's telekinetic terror of Neo-Tokyo.
These two maestros of kinesis have ignited revolution not just in their worlds, but also the very mediums they exist within.
He's Wiz and I'm Boomstick.
And it's our job to analyze their weapons, armor, and skills to find out who would win a death battle.
In the short duration of modern civilization, likely no conflict tested humanity more than the Second World War. In the primary Marvel 616 universe, this fact is no different, especially to the Eisenhart family and their only son.
You may know him as Magnus, Eric, or Max, but if you ask him, he'd say his true name is Magneto.
As a Jewish child in Nazi Germany, Magneto's early life was, well, extremely traumatic.
Even after eventually escaping certain death with his future wife, misfortune always followed wherever he went.
Thanks to his unexpected mutation called the X gene, the mark of a superhuman. After settling down in Russia with his new family, the KGB quickly found out about this quirk, so they burned his house down with his own daughter inside.
Naturally, he snapped and killed them all. I don't blame him, I'd do that too. Too bad his wife didn't get it and ditched him though. But that's when Magneto made a choice. Since humans hurt him his entire life, he'd do the same to them in the name of mutants everywhere.
At first, Magneto turned to the telepathic powerhouse Charles Xavier and his fledgling team of heroes. But his new friend wasn't thrilled with the idea of, subjugating the human race. So, Magneto formed his own team of mutants, the Brotherhood.
Magneto can telekinetically move, bend, and reshape any metal he's aware of. Bullets, vehicles, buildings, you name it.
Yo,
Even
Magneto's
himself
so
when he
boss, it's
manipulates his
crazy.
personal magnetic field for flight and energy barriers.
Magnetic kinesis is far more versatile than it would appear at first glance. The blood...
Dude, Magneto is one of those characters who the vast majority of people who know who he is don't truly understand how powerful this guy is, how broken he is. They assume, well, Magneto, he's magnets, right? He can move metal, whatever. That's like the most basic thing that he can do. You know, he doesn't just control like magnets and magnetic fields. No, Magneto can manipulate anything on the electromagnetic spectrum. Electromagnetism is one of the four fundamental forces of the universe alongside the weak and strong nuclear forces and gravity itself. So electromagnetism and the control of electromagnetism is absolutely nothing to scoff at. It is insane, the things that Magneto has been able to do over the long course of his history in the comics. I mean, wild stuff. So
in your body has iron in it. The air has traces of lead and mercury. Whole mountains are lined with metallic ore. The earth itself is surrounded by a literal magnetic field.
So many toys for Maggie to play with. He can detect magnetic fields at such a huge range, he can even pinpoint Earth's magnetic rays while stranded on a planet in another galaxy. And guess what? He was able to use those rays to pull himself back to Earth in a single day.
His range is even more remarkable than that. Did you know that in 1820, physicist Hans Christian Ørsted discovered that electric currents, like those of electrons and protons and atoms, produce their own magnetic fields? Magneto can fine-tune his control to affect these very subatomic particles. Dummy here will illustrate such a particle, with positively charged protons and negative electrons.
My life is as meaningless as an atom is small.
So what you're saying is Magneto could, like, yank one of those out?
Correct, potentially changing an atom's entire chemical makeup. However, neutrons do not have a charge, and without the ability to adjust those to accommodate the change in atomic mass, the atom would become unstable and
The little bot is so suicidal. He's like, finally, as he explodes.
do that. Magneto's violent protest against humankind clashed with Xavier's peaceful reconciliation, not unlike the ideologies taught by Malcolm X and Dr. King, by whom Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were inspired. Magneto would spend most of his career pushing Xavier away to prove his philosophies superior, which meant doing battle with Xavier's school of thought, quite literally.
And Baldy's mind powers are no joke, but thanks to Magneto's psionic repelling helmet, Professor X couldn't touch him. Magneto survived Cyclops' earth-splitting lasers, absorbed the power of the sun to battle Iron Man, ripped the adamantium skeleton out of Wolverine's body, and even taken on Hercules himself.
He was also, at one point in the comics, he was also de-aged because he was getting a little up there in age. He was in like his 60s or 70s or something, and he was starting to become a little frail. And I forget the circumstances of the story, but long story short, he was able to be de-aged. So they brought him from like, late 60s, early 70s down into his mid 30s. So he's actually older than you would think he is as well. Yeah, he's a beast.
You know, the Greek legend, Zero to Hero? The guy who held up the skies of Olympus for Atlas? That Hercules.
Seems sensible. Magneto once used the Earth's magnetic field to overwhelm the Phoenix Force, which can effortlessly destroy planets, let alone far more.
Hell, if he really wanted to, Magneto could totally just fling the Earth off its axis.
It's entirely possible he may have eventually resorted to just that. Over time, it became clear Magneto's war was doing far more harm than good for his fellow mutants.
Yeah, and Magneto, man, he's done so much stuff, man. Creating Asteroid M, creating Genosha, his whole mutant movement. He's able to just dismantle Sentinels. He's the one that killed Apocalypse originally. He's so beast. He's so beast.
However well-intentioned he may have been at first.
Luckily, he later realized he was going a bit overboard and began reevaluating his perspective. Good for you, Mags. It's really tough to recognize when you're the baddie.
It took time and patience not just from Magneto, but also from his peers. Yet eventually, his path was completely changed. He even became a leader for Xavier's X-Men.
But don't let his new goody two-shoes ways fool you. Whenever there's a threat to mutants, you can bet Magneto will be there to annihilate it. Forever, by any means necessary.
All right. So that was Magneto's breakdown. Let's talk just a little bit about Magneto before we move on. So Magneto's beast. Yeah, his powers and abilities are almost always underrated because people don't really understand what he's fully capable of. And as a character, I've always really liked Magneto. If let's pretend we live in the Marvel world for a second, okay? And let's pretend that mutants were real one day. They just showed up. They had powers. They could fly, turn their skin to steel, shoot optic blasts out their eyes, telepathy, healing powers, the whole 9 yards, right? And it was scientifically proven that they are just simply a genetic offshoot of human beings. They have a genetic mutation that allows them to do these things. I'm one of those people that agrees with Magneto, man. Magneto is right. Mutants are the next step in human evolution. And to deny that is simply just lying to yourself. Like, most of the things Magneto has done as well haven't been like overtly evil things. He's always fighting for his people who are constantly attacked and belittled and marginalized. So I completely understand where he's coming from a character perspective, as well as, from just the perspective of him having all this power in his hands. Like, I get it, man. I get it. He wants to help his people, and if that were real, I'd be on Magneto's side. But then again, I always tend to like those type of characters. I always tend to like characters who are more anti-hero or fall on the side of being the villain more because I find them more interesting. So, I like Magneto more than Xavier. I like Vegeta more than Goku. I like Darkseid better than Superman. I just like those characters. But yeah, Magneto, he's a beast. So let's go ahead and get into Tetsuo.
Set off over Tokyo, and 9 hours later began the Third World War.
Welcome to 2030, or 2019 if you're watching the anime.
Neo
The buildings
Tokyo.
are taller, the motorcycles are cooler, and the future is brighter. Oh, wait, not really. If you find yourself in the capsule gang, you'll meet Shotaro Kaneda, who's like your textbook anime Chad.
Kaneda!
Gets the ladies, beats the baddies, and cops the sweetest rigs. Man, I need to get me one of those.
And then there's the little brother of the group, Kaneda's best friend, Tetsuo Shima. He's, well...
The exact opposite. A total wimp. As a kid, Tetsuo in his college thesis forehead got bullied for being the new kid at
His
the orphanage.
college thesis
That's until
forehead.
Big Bro Kaneda came to the rescue.
Eventually, the two went to vocational school together and formed the Capsules. But Tetsuo was never satisfied with Kaneda being the leader of the pack. Tetsuo desired more than anything to be top dog.
Oh, I can just see that monkey's paw curling in my mind. Or that kid walking down the street. Shit! Tetsuo, watch out! You're gonna... That definitely should have killed him. But since it didn't, Tetsuo earned himself a ticket to military confinement. Turns out they had an under-the-table program for developing child superweapons.
In the same program that backfired and jump-started the war, Tetsuo became Japan's Esper number 41.
He may not have been a natural with bikes, baddies, or babes, but this telekinesis stuff hit different. He walked out of that hospital ward effortlessly flying, reading minds, and blending people into strawberry jelly. Tetsuo got what he wanted. Power, along with the hunger for more of it.
A whole buttload of power. Yeah, Tetsuo is also a beast. Much like Magneto, his powers are just, wild in their scope of capability. Yeah, man, it was just absolutely beast. He's, his only flaw, his only weakness, honestly, is his lack of control over his own abilities. And that, that comes to a head in the movie very clearly.
A hunger that used to only be satiated with drugs. And not just any gateway drug, pills so potent that a single gram of the stuff could kill you.
So, pretty bad. Kinda reminds me of college days, huh, Snow Wizard?
Tetsuo's main ability is his constantly increasing psionic energy, growing more and more powerful over time. This is due to
I
Tetsuo's
love that
link to,
scene.
quote, the memories of the universe, end quote. It's weird.
Either way, Tetsuo leveled up from lame gangbuster to certified badass. This guy is a walking natural disaster. His telekinesis can shake the planet, easily cause earthquakes over 12 miles below the surface. He can summon psychic barriers for defense and crush foes with friggin' gravity wells. He can dart around as a literal bolt of lightning or even teleport in an instant.
Tetsuo's telekinesis can be so precise he can target and obliterate specific parts of the body. He can heal severe wounds quickly, but even after losing a whole limb, he can craft a new one using whatever nearby materials he wants.
With these powers, Top Dog Kaneda didn't matter anymore. Who needed his approval? Tetsuo tasted that good shit and he was hooked. And when he found out another Esper named Akira could deal him even more power, he rampaged through Tokyo to find him.
And this is where versions of the story differ.
Ahem, spoilers ahoy!
You may be familiar with the 1988 animation, where Akira had been dissected for research. However, in the original manga, Akira is not only alive, but even more powerful.
Once that little runt nuked Tokyo, Tetsuo would erect the Great Tokyo Empire with Akira and himself as its leaders. But he ended up just abusing the position for endless sex and inflating his ego.
With Kaneda's rebellion at his front door, Tetsuo took a turn for the worse. He had to fight.
Tetsuo's defeated other powerful Espers, dodged light-speed lasers, and jumped to the moon faster than anyone could blink, and then punched a big old hole in it. And if you ask, Boomstick, wouldn't that mess up gravity on Earth? You would be right, because it totally did. screwed the planet, I guess. Stupid moon.
Which brings us to Tetsuo's folly. His abuse of his powers spiraled until he lost control. Unfortunately for Kanada's rebellion, this did not make Tetsuo an easier enemy to confront. Exactly opposite, in fact, as Tetsuo painfully mutated into an unstoppable behemoth.
Yep, that's not totally disturbing at all.
Woo!
I'm happy to say the manga's version is even more disturbing.
I mean, I know babies
Got like
can
that
be monsters,
Cronenberg
but that's a
horror
whole
going
nother
on.
level.
It is pain incarnate. I can relate. Another Esper described Tetsuo's struggle as ego death, which has multiple definitions, but in this case is likely symbolic of the version attributed to drug use.
Yeah, it's described as a shedding of one's own identity, like how LSD can emulate a wild out-of-body experience, and you come back with a new perspective. Though this is maybe a little more extreme. In fact, you could say Tetsuo was shedding his human body to play with the powers of a god.
I wish I could shed out of my body. But in this case, Tetsuo going full out of body meant becoming a mound of raw, ever-expanding energy.
Which almost nuked Tokyo all over again. And those explosions are not normal. I would know.
Top scientists in both the manga and animated versions describe these explosions as births of a new universe.
Given its properties of nuclear fusion and proton collapse, Tetsuo's mutated form was likely creating a Big Bang.
You know, the thing that started our whole universe?
Right, in the manga, it instead ended the Espers and their abilities once and for all. A testament that humankind is unsuited to wield the powers of the divine.
Though the anime is even more trippy. Thanks to Akira and his buddies, Tetsuo got so high on ego death, he ascended time-space to become god of a new universe. Kinda worth it, right?
And yet, Kanada kept his empire up in his honor, now as the Great Akira Empire. Ironically, in death, Tetsuo finally received the attention he so desperately craved.
All right, guys, that was the breakdown of Tetsuo. Tetsuo is just crazy, man. Let me start out by saying that the anime Akira is just amazing. If you haven't seen it, I recommend watching it. It's animation. Dude, for the time it came out in the mid to late 80s, it was groundbreaking, and it's still watch it today. The animation is amazing. It's better than a lot of the mangas, or animes and shows that we have out now. The animation is just so solid. It was probably the first legit, like, real anime movie I had ever seen as a kid, and it absolutely blew my mind. The animation, the subject matter, the visuals, just everything that goes down in the story just blew my mind. It was the first time that I saw certain things like visualized a certain way, like to see telekinesis used to like obliterate things in a 3D space. It was amazing. It was amazing. And I owe a huge debt of gratitude to the movie Akira for basically igniting a love for anime that I didn't know was a thing. Oh, before I get into the prediction, look at this. I've been toting this thing around forever because I love this movie so much. My old Akira full-size poster that I've been hauling around for years, that I've taken with me to all the places that I've moved, because it's like I said, it's got a special spot in my heart. That being said, as much as I love Akira and Tetsuo, guys, I'm still gonna have to go with Magneto, because he is the master manipulator of electromagnetism. Now, I will say that Tetsuo has super telekinesis, which basically ignores magnetic fields and things like that. But in the end, Magneto just has more feats over decades of comic writing that simply just, in my opinion, make him stronger, make him a more capable combatant. Plus, he's been around forever. And Tetsuo's like defining characteristic of him as a person is his lack of control. Before he got powers, he didn't really have self-control. He couldn't maintain himself. He was addicted to drugs. Once he got powers, he completely went off the rails, was constantly kind of experimenting with his powers until in the movie, which you guys just saw, he pushed it too far and lost control completely. He would have won the fight in the movie had he not lost control, but he lost control and basically self-destructed. So for that reason, I'm giving this one to Magneto because he excels in the very thing that Tetsuo is weak at, and that's self-discipline, self-control, and mastery over one's own powers. So let's get into it.
All right, the combatants are set. We've run the data through all possibilities.
It's time for a death battle!
Even in Japan, they fail to recognize our superiority.
Wrong country, Grandpa! You're in Akira turf now!
Alright, so we got like a 3D background with a 2D sprites. Okay.
You're dead meat!
Those are like the Marvel vs. Capcom sprites for Magneto.
Impudent child!
The hell are you calling child? I make the rules around here!
You're wasting my time. Parlor tricks for the Master of Magnetism.
I'll kill you!
Oof. Yeah, see, that telekinesis can bypass electromagnetic barriers. All right. Shattered his helmet. Oh man, is Magneto gonna lose? Ah.
Believe I've had enough tantrums to last a
Bro, how you gonna attack Magneto with a metal arm? Come on.
lifetime.
Oh, he's mutating. Oh man, Magneto looking a little disheartened here.
Listen, welcome. I'll handle this on my own. Not die! Hurts. Help me.
Oh boy. Metal from the blood, alright. Did he lose? Nah, okay. I think he was able to contain the blast. Oh! Oh.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Yo, that was close.
KO! Tetsuo! I've never never doing that again.
That was
Tetsuo's
close.
esoteric telekinesis and other bizarre abilities certainly gave Magneto pause, but the Master of Magnetism had greater control over his foe.
The numbers don't lie. Tetsuo cratering the moon was insane, but Magneto punched Iron Man with the force of the sun. And while Tetsuo jumped all the way to the moon, Magneto could move across galaxies.
Against Tetsuo in his human form, Magneto obviously held a sizable advantage in power and speed.
But stats aren't all that matters. With his precise telekinesis, Tetsuo could just target Magneto's organs. GG, right?
Yes, but Magneto had similar skills. There are very few substances on Earth that lack any metallic or magnetic component, and Magneto is very creative with his powers.
Which he could use to predict Tetsuo's teleportation and even shut down his telekinesis. And his scraps with Xavier prove he could handle Tetsuo's messing with his head. The biggest challenge for Magneto was when Tetsuo's gross mutated power came into play.
Especially given how the detonations from this form were compared to that of a Big Bang. Although the authenticity of that observation is questionable. In truth, the Big Bang was a sudden expansion of matter on a universal scale, whereas Tetsuo's explosions are more akin to nuclear blasts, clearly intentional given the post-war symbolism of the Akira story.
The whole creating an alternate universe bit wasn't even part of the original material, so we can't exactly call it canon.
But let's just say the comparison wasn't superfluous. Let's say Tetsuo did in fact cause a Big Bang capable of creating or destroying an entire universe, alternate or otherwise.
Turns out Magneto had the tools to stop that too. Helmet Head could overpower Hercules, who was strong enough to hold up the skies of Olympus, which is literally heaven and an alternate universe.
This doesn't necessarily mean Magneto could easily destroy a universe with a snap of his fingers, but it does prove he can match a similar level of power. And context is everything. Tetsuo's Big Bang eruption specifically exhibited proton collapse, meaning its atomic structure was primarily an unstable mess of neutrons and electrons. And Magneto has detected and commanded unstable electrons before. This means Magneto had every means available to take control over this Big Bang.
Damn, and I thought he could just move some metal around. It's like the question posed by some of the greatest prophets of our time. Fucking magnets. How do they even work?
Magneto's astonishing
Magnets.
power and intelligent control over all things magnetism triumphed in the end.
Tetsuo pushed his luck, but didn't have the metal to pull off the win.
The winner is Magneto.
All right, guys. That was Magneto versus Tetsuo. That was pretty good. It's definitely not a pairing that I would have thought to have put together and have them fight each other. Tetsuo definitely had the tools to be able to win this fight, but I don't think he had the experience. You got to remember, Tetsuo is a drug-addicted teenager. At no point in time was he known for clever thinking or combat prowess, while Magneto is all of those things. He's a master tactician. He's significantly older than most people think he is. He's got all kinds of experience. He knows how to use his powers for offense, defense, for utility purposes, for all kinds of stuff. Magneto is absolutely insane. So they gave him the win, and I agree with it. Again, I love doing these death battles. I hope you guys like them. If you did, please like and subscribe. As always, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought of this death battle. Let me know what other death battles I should take a look at next. As always, take care of yourselves and have a great day.